You finally meet someone who seems incredibly confident. They walk into a room like they belong there, they talk easily, they seem charming, ambitious, funny. And somehow, within 5 minutes, you find yourself thinking, wow, this person really likes themselves. But then you notice something strange. They don't just want to be good, they need to be seen as good. They don't simply enjoy compliments, they seem to need them. And when someone challenges them, something changes. Maybe they become defensive. Maybe they become cold. Maybe they suddenly need to prove that they're better. And this is where narcissism gets interesting. Because narcissism isn't simply thinking you're amazing. And according to psychologist W. Keith Campbell, it isn't even something that only a few terrible people possess. Narcissism exists on a spectrum. Which means the uncomfortable part is, you probably have some of it too. Before you panic, stay with me. Because understanding narcissism isn't really about finding the narcissists in your life. It's about understanding something much more human. Our need to feel important.
Think about the last time you accomplished something. Maybe you got a good grade, finished a difficult project, looked unusually good in a photo, got praised by your boss, or posted something online and suddenly your phone became very interesting. One notification, then another. You tell yourself you're just checking the time. Sure. And then there's the little moment when someone compliments you. It feels good. Of course it does. There's nothing wrong with that. Wanting recognition is normal. Wanting to feel valuable is normal. Wanting people to notice your achievements is normal. That's part of being human. So narcissism isn't simply, I love myself. It's more complicated. Campbell's work treats narcissism as a personality trait that varies between people, rather than something that automatically means a person has a mental disorder. Most people fall somewhere in the middle, while some people show much stronger narcissistic tendencies. And this distinction matters, because we have started using the word narcissist for almost anyone who annoys us.
Your selfish acts? Narcissist. Your arrogant coworker? Narcissist. Someone who posted 10 selfies? Definitely narcissist. But psychology is more precise than that. Narcissism is better understood as a pattern, involving things like self-importance, entitlement, admiration, and the way a person uses relationships to support their positive view of themselves. And that creates a fascinating question. Why would someone need so badly to feel important? The need to be special. Imagine two people walk into the same party. The first person thinks, I hope people like me. The second thinks, I hope people recognize how impressive I am. Those sound similar, but psychologically, they're not exactly the same. The first person is concerned about belonging. The second is concerned about status. And narcissism has a lot to do with that second motivation. The person isn't only asking, do people like me? They're asking, do people see me as special? That's why admiration can become so important. Compliments aren't just pleasant anymore. They become evidence. Evidence that the person is successful, important, attractive, intelligent, powerful, special. And when that evidence disappears, the psychological system can become uncomfortable. This is one reason narcissistic behavior can look confusing from the outside. A person can appear extremely confident while being remarkably sensitive to criticism. And that leads us to one of the biggest misunderstandings about narcissism. Narcissism does not always look like confidence.
The two faces of narcissism. There is a form researchers often call grandiose narcissism. This is probably the version you imagine first. Confident, dominant, socially bold, ambitious, status conscious. Sometimes charming, sometimes charismatic. These people may genuinely believe they are exceptional. And here's the strange part, some of those characteristics can actually be useful. Campbell's work has pointed out that grandiose narcissism can provide short-term advantages in areas such as social interaction, leadership emergence, public speaking, dating, and gaining attention. The problem is that the same qualities can create costs over time, especially in relationships. Think about it. If you believe you're capable, you may be more willing to raise your hand. If you expect to succeed, you may take bigger opportunities. If you're comfortable putting yourself forward, people may notice you. So narcissism isn't simply a list of bad traits. It can contain traits that are useful until they become excessive. It's like turning up the volume. Confidence at a healthy level can help you. turn it up too far, and eventually nobody can hear the music. And then there's another form, one that is much easier to miss. The narcissist who doesn't look confident. Imagine someone who doesn't walk into the room saying, "I'm the best." Instead, they constantly worry, "Everyone is judging me." They are extremely sensitive to criticism. They may feel misunderstood. They may compare themselves with everyone. They may desperately want recognition, but feel too insecure to openly demand it. This is often described as vulnerable narcissism. It can look almost opposite to grandiosity. One person says, "I'm amazing. Everyone should know it." The other thinks, "I'm special, but nobody appreciates me." Different surface, similar underlying concern. How am I being valued? Campbell and other researchers have emphasized that narcissism is not one simple personality package. Different expressions can exist, including grandiose and vulnerable forms. And suddenly, a lot of confusing behavior starts making more sense. The loud person demanding attention and the quiet person constantly feeling overlooked may look completely different, but both can be highly focused on the self. This is why simply asking, "Does this person seem confident?" doesn't tell you much. The better question is, how dependent is their sense of worth on being seen a certain way?
Because everyone wants a positive self-image. You want to believe you're a decent person. You want to believe your choices make sense. You want to believe your life has value. And when something threatens that picture, your mind doesn't always respond calmly. Imagine you make a mistake at work. A healthy response might be, "I messed that up. I'll fix it." But if your identity is strongly connected to being brilliant, the same mistake can feel much bigger. It doesn't just mean, "I made a mistake." It starts to feel like, "Maybe I'm not as impressive as I thought." That's a threat to identity, and suddenly the brain has a problem to solve. Maybe the mistake wasn't your fault. Maybe your coworker is jealous. Maybe the instructions were terrible. Maybe everyone else is incompetent. Maybe the person criticizing you is simply stupid. Sometimes those explanations may even be partly true. That's what makes this difficult. Self-protection doesn't always look obviously irrational. Sometimes it looks like a perfectly reasonable explanation that just happens to protect your ego every single time.
And this is where entitlement enters the picture. Entitlement is the expectation that you deserve special treatment. Not simply, "I'd like to succeed," but "I deserve to succeed." Not, "I'd like people to respect me," but "people should respect me." That little word, "should," can reveal a lot, because when reality doesn't cooperate with our expectations, frustration appears. Someone cuts you off in traffic. You think, "How dare they?" Someone doesn't reply. "How could they ignore me?" You get passed over for an opportunity. "They obviously don't recognize my talent." Again, having these thoughts occasionally doesn't make someone a narcissist. Everyone has moments of ego. Everyone gets jealous. Everyone wants recognition. Everyone sometimes thinks they're more important than they really are. That's normal human psychology. The difference is the pattern. How often does it happen? How strongly does it shape behavior? And what happens when reality disagrees with the person's preferred self-image?
Because here's the uncomfortable paradox. The more someone needs the world to confirm "I am special," the more threatening ordinary human experiences can become. Criticism becomes dangerous. Rejection becomes dangerous. Failure becomes dangerous. Being ignored becomes dangerous. Even someone else's success can become dangerous. Because another person's success can feel like evidence against your own importance. And this is one reason narcissism can create problems in relationships. Relationships require something narcissism can make difficult: temporarily moving attention away from yourself. Listening, compromising, celebrating someone else's success, admitting you were wrong, caring about another person's experience even when it doesn't benefit you. Research involving Campbell has found that narcissism can produce short-term benefits for the individual while creating longer-term social costs when self-focused, acquisitive behavior harms shared outcomes. And relationships are, essentially, shared outcomes. You can't build closeness if every disagreement becomes a competition. You can't build trust if every conversation becomes a referendum on your worth. You can't truly celebrate another person if their success always feels like your loss.
But now we need to make one important distinction. Narcissism is not the same thing as healthy self-esteem. Healthy self-esteem says, "I have value." Narcissism often says, "I need to be seen as valuable." Those sound almost identical, but psychologically, they point in different directions.
A person with healthy self-esteem can admit, I was wrong, because being wrong doesn't destroy their entire identity. A highly narcissistic person may experience the same admission as humiliation. And that's why genuine confidence is often quieter than narcissism. Real confidence doesn't constantly need an audience. It can survive a bad day. It can survive criticism. It can survive someone else being better at something. It can say, I'm good at this, without needing to add, and therefore you are beneath me. That's an important perspective shift. Maybe the opposite of narcissism isn't hating yourself. Maybe it's becoming secure enough that you don't need to constantly prove yourself.
So, are you narcissistic? And this brings the whole topic back to you. Not because you are secretly a narcissist, but because you have an ego. So does everyone. The useful question isn't, am I a narcissist? That's usually too simplistic. Ask instead, what happens to me when I don't feel important? Do you become defensive? Do you desperately seek approval? Do you compare yourself? Do you become jealous? Do you need to win every argument? Do you struggle when someone else gets attention? Do you turn criticism into an attack on your identity? These aren't diagnoses. They're invitations to look inward. Because the goal isn't to eliminate your ego. That's probably impossible. The goal is to make your sense of worth less fragile. To be able to receive praise without needing it. To accept criticism without collapsing. To succeed without needing everyone else to lose. To care about your own value without making yourself the center of every room.
And perhaps that's the most useful lesson in Campbell's view of narcissism. Narcissism isn't simply about loving yourself too much. It's about understanding how self-focus, status, admiration, entitlement, and relationships interact. And once you see it this way, you stop looking for cartoon villains. You start seeing a spectrum, a human trait, something that can be expressed differently in different people, and something that can exist in small amounts inside ordinary human behavior. The person bragging about themselves might be chasing admiration. The person constantly feeling overlooked might be chasing recognition too. And sometimes the person doing both is you. Not because you're broken, because you're human. We all want to matter. The question is whether we can learn to matter to ourselves without needing the entire world to prove it. Because the moment your worth stops depending entirely on applause, someone else's success becomes less threatening. Criticism becomes easier to hear. Failure becomes survivable.
And relationships become less about proving who is important and more about actually being close. Maybe that's what healthy confidence looks like. Not standing above everyone, not standing below everyone, just standing comfortably among them. And if you enjoy learning about the hidden psychology behind ordinary human behavior, subscribe to Psychology at 3 a.m. There are a lot more strange things happening inside our minds than we usually notice. And sometimes, understanding them changes the way we see everything.